Hello, public opinion aficionados, and welcome to Rasmussen Reports. And guess what? New COVID polling just dropped yesterday, and we're going to talk about it today. And this is my favorite topic because if you come up with a list of all the things that separates Rasmussen Reports from everybody else, things like our accuracy, our independence, our really loud, irreverent, anti establishment voice, our predisposition to ask questions that make people uncomfortable, I think the biggest one would be COVID vaccine polling, because this was a complete letdown by the entire industry. People were struggling to come to grips with everything they saw going on around them during COVID. And there were a lot of questions about the medical industry, about the way people were being treated, about the number of deaths, about the peculiar things that they saw happen to their family members who got COVID and went to the hospital, the way that those people were treated, and decisions passed down from people in positions of authority in the health industry that just didn't make sense. And pollsters could have stepped in and helped things out, helped restore trust in the medical industry. Well, let's just say you saw a weatherman drop dead on TV. And that caused you to have a question. Oh, I'm concerned. Maybe it's the vaccine. Maybe it's not safe. Well, pollsters could have asked America and maybe come back with a result that was like, no, 99% of Americans think it's safe. And there's only 1%, and you're part of that 1%. And people would have said, oh, okay, maybe it's just me. But peculiarly, not a single pollster. Well, Rich Barrist asked, I think, one question set. Not a single pollster went after this topic, almost like it was radioactive. They knew they were not allowed to touch it. Maybe it was because they worship Fauci. Maybe it was because of their bosses. Maybe it was because of the advertisers. Maybe it was because of fear of the pharmaceutical industry, but not a single pollster polled on the topic of COVID. And we did a lot. CIA came after us. Some of our customers polled. We lost advertising revenue, and yet we still did it because it was the right thing to do. And even now, we're still asking questions that nobody has asked in 5 years, important questions, and you're going to see them today. But first, I wanted to take a moment to piss you off about the state of our healthcare industry. You know, you go to a hospital, you walk around these massive buildings, happy employees everywhere, and you say to yourself, man, what a stunning thing we've built. It's a pinnacle of American achievement, the best healthcare system anywhere in the world. And maybe it is. Maybe it is unbelievable, a pinnacle of human achievement. But it came at a very great cost. And if you hear Ron Paul talk about being a physician back in, whenever he was, 40s, 50s, 60s, it was doctors making house calls, getting paid in cash. Yeah, there were hospitals. Yeah, there were specialties. But it is nothing like what it is now. Right now, the national debt is $38 trillion, pretty close. I think it's coming up on 38 trillion. But I asked Grok to do some math, and it turns out that $20 trillion of that was spent on Medicare and Medicaid, and these programs have only been around since like 1965. Over half of our total public debt is because of the sick care that we afforded to the poor and the elderly. Now, maybe that was the right thing to do. Maybe it was compassion, the transfer payments at the point of a gun. Maybe it was compassion, but you have to ask yourself, was that money spent well? Is our system efficient? Are we getting the kind of outcomes that we deserve after literally writing checks that our country can't cash and selling the future of America's children down the river? Is what we have now worth it? And then there's things like this that piss me off even more. In 35 years, we flipped the US map from manufacturing being the largest employer in most states to healthcare being the largest employer. We need to flip the map back. There's the map, 1990, just 1990. Yeah, a lot of blue, a lot of yellow, and obviously globalization had something to do with manufacturing reducing. But here is the purple map. Healthcare industry is now the largest employer in most states. And okay, sure, you have aging boomers. And so the healthcare industry had to expand for them. But on whose backs, dear voter? You, the taxpayer. It was done on your back. You are funding the doctors. You're funding the nurses. You're funding the construction of these massive buildings. You're funding the health insurance industry. How does this map make you feel knowing that for many people, your monthly healthcare premium is almost as much, if not more than, a pretty reasonable monthly rent. And then I want to grease the skids for the polling. I'm just gonna read. I thought this was a very important thread in order to set the tone, give us some context to this conversation about the polling that we did. I'm not making any accusations. I'm not a doctor. I'm just reading something that somebody else posted, but we're going to read it together. And this is Vigilant Fox. He's a really good follow, especially on COVID stuff. Hospitals murdered COVID patients. The more they killed, the more money they made. Isn't that nice? When the hospitals tested for COVID, they got paid more. When they admitted patients for COVID, they got paid more. When they put people on remdesivir, they got paid more. And when they put loved ones on the ventilator, they got paid more. Meanwhile, family requests for ivermectin were denied while their loved ones were placed on this death protocol instead. If you think that this started with COVID, think again. Hospitals are still a death sentence for loved ones. Before the unexpected happens, learn how this death trap works to keep your loved ones safe. The information in this thread comes from the work of medical research, Midwestern Doc. For all the sources and details, read the full report. COVID pulled back the curtain for millions of people. True statement. On a mass scale, we learned that hospitals across the country followed standardized federal protocols, not individualized care. Yeah, there was a crisis of trust. Trust in the healthcare industry absolutely collapsed. Last time we tested it, 58% of America said that they need to take healthcare decisions into their own hands because they don't trust the stuff that they're getting out of their doctors. Things like remdesivir and ventilators were pushed on dying patients. Ivermectin and other affordable therapies were banned. Even when doctors knew their patients would die, many refused to try alternatives, and families were left in the dark. Why did this happen? Because the NIH treatment guidelines, written by Fauci's handpicked panel, financially rewarded hospitals for using remdesivir and ventilators and punished them for using cheaper off patent drugs. Remdesivir, I think, is a Gilead product, and I think that there are some accusations about a revolving door between regulatory and Gilead roles at the top. I don't know. I'm not a researcher that follows that kind of stuff, but I'm sure there's some stuff out there. Doctors who resisted were threatened and even fired. You can't upset the gravy train. Hospitals that complied were paid handsomely, even when their success rates treating COVID patients were abysmal. It's common knowledge remdesivir increased the death rate. Hospitals and doctors had to see it playing out in real time, but it stayed the standard of care. And according to my brother, earned the nickname Run Death is Near. But that's because the committee behind those rules was stacked with people who had financial ties to Gilead, remdesivir's manufacturer. Yep. Nothing about the COVID protocols used by the hospitals around the country and around the world was actually about saving patients. The main cause of preventable hospital deaths isn't illness itself, but blind obedience to protocol, to the money. When protocols replace thinking, patients die. It's simple and it's beyond tragic. Desperate families had to sue hospitals for the right to give dying relatives ivermectin, sue them. In 80 court cases handled by attorney Ralph Lorigo, 40 families won, 38 of those patients survived, 40 families lost, and only 2 survived. Those numbers speak volumes. One whistleblower nurse secretly recorded New York hospital staff during COVID. Doctors openly admitted that they'd rather follow orders than try something that might save someone's life. What about the Hippocratic Oath? Unbelievable. Yes, this was a moment that exposed just how far medicine had fallen. And these were not people that were going down like Building 7 on 9/11 rabbit holes. This is stuff that was openly being discussed on many places like Facebook, Twitter, many conservative forums, War Room. This is stuff they tried to suppress, but there was a little bit of the Streisand effect. Well before the pandemic, this shift was already underway. Medicine was moving away from the art of healing towards algorithmic obedience and billing codes. The government healthcare complex, that's the problem. In this new world of medicine, doctors are trained to follow protocols, not question them. Independent judgment is punished. Bureaucratic compliance is rewarded. Hospitals have become more dangerous than the disease they treat. Well, that's opinion, but warranted, in my opinion. Hospitals are no longer run by doctors, but by corporate administrators obsessed with metrics, and they have a massive and increasing administrative layer, a managerial class that gets bigger and bigger. When it comes to health and medical care, some metrics make sense. For instance, things like infection rates make sense to track. Others are meaningless, like vaccination rates. Yet all of the money in the polling industry, Morning Consult, all of the money in the polling industry went just to measure vaccination rates. Yet they determine how much Medicare reimburses the hospitals. All of the researchers polling on COVID vaccines were just chasing dollars. Doctors are trained and incentivized to chase numbers instead of outcomes. Yeah. I mean, it goes on. It's a really great thread, but let's get to the polling. And before we do, I want to make a case to please go to rasmussenreports.com. We almost went out of business because of our COVID polling, and we did it only because it was the right thing to do, and we did it for you. And even now, even with this new polling, you'd think that there would be a lot of people interested in it. Maybe RFK Jr., Nicole Shanahan, maybe people in the MAHA movement, maybe people in the administration, HHS, NIH, maybe some of the other people, the COVID influencers. We put this out, and very, 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 very few people cared, took note, signal boosted it at all. And we've done a lot of COVID polling, but really only 7 or 8 question sets over the span of 4 years. I mean, it's not like it comes out every day. And this is, again, a novel question set. Nobody has asked this. And so I'm afraid that people are looking in the rearview mirror and watching COVID and all of the bad things that came along with it fade into the horizon. And I don't think we can allow that. I think we need to restore trust in our regulators, in the healthcare industry and insurance, because right now, this is one of the things that is increasing the temperature of the pot of water that the frog is currently close to boiling in. Now, just a quick recap of the most important hits. The first thing we found in the fall of 2022 is that, as far as I know, everybody was talking about the VAERS database. As far as I know, nobody had questioned Americans about whether they had a side effect from the vaccine or not. We found that 41% said they had at least a minor side effect. 7% of those said they had a major side effect. And I believe the math worked out to something like 12 million Americans with a major side effect. That's pretty bad. And then we asked the question, do you know somebody personally that you believe died from the COVID vaccine? The number came back 28%. We've asked that a couple of times. It wasn't a fluke. Every single time it's been between 24 and 28%. Basically, 1 in 4 Americans personally know somebody that they think the vaccine killed. Then we asked, how likely is it that the vaccine is causing a significant number of unexplained deaths? 48%, almost half of America. And these things weren't driven all by Republicans. There is a bipartisan signal. Democrats are almost as much as Republicans, not as much, but close, and independents too, because we're talking about not something that's political. It's observation. They got a vaccine, then something happened, and now, yes, I'm making that causal connection. Then we asked, has somebody in your family died from the COVID virus? 11% of America said yes. Then we asked, has somebody in your household died that you believe death was caused by side effects of the COVID vaccine? 10% yes. So roughly an equal number of Americans say they know somebody that died from the virus, as say they know somebody who died from the COVID vaccine side effects. And then there's this one. This one is wild. This is just from recently, just like a month ago, month and a half. How likely is it that side effects of the COVID-19 vaccines have caused a significant number of unexplained deaths? Now, we had 48 before, and we tested it a couple times and still got high 40s. That was that was American adults. This is US likely voters. So these are the people paying attention to the news and voting for politicians. And here, 56% say it's at least somewhat likely, 32% very likely, only 17% say not at all likely, 25% say not likely. And we'll look at the party signals just to give you an idea. This is pretty representative of the stuff that we found time and time again. 46% of Democrats say likely. 70% of Republicans now, Republican Party, all of you people who are backed by the pharmaceutical industry, your voters, almost all, when they go to vote for you, are holding their nose. A lot of them assume that you're taking this money. A lot of the news they consume is supported by advertisers from this industry, and yet they believe a significant number of deaths are being caused by a product put out by this industry. The people who financially back you. John Thune, who took all of this money from pharmaceuticals, personal checks in February of 2022. Why? Independents, 54% think it's likely. And look, even the young ones, 18 to 29-year-olds, 60% say it's likely. Only 31% say not. Everybody across the age spectrum, across the race, this is everybody. But here's the story from today. Many suspect hospital treatments contributed to COVID-19 deaths. Yep, they do. Here's the polling. 1,382 American adults conducted last week. Has someone you know personally died from COVID-19 while being treated in a hospital? 32% say yes. 1 in 3 Americans know somebody that went to a hospital and died with COVID. And it's fewer young people, but pretty flat across gender and age, pretty flat across race. This is how you know it's a real signal. When it's not like, look, 34% Democrat, 31% Republican. So these people are answering honestly. I don't think there's any aspect of politics going into this at all. And so now we have 442 adults who say they know somebody personally. We ask them the second question. Now, it's important to note we're not asking everybody here. We're not asking people, do you think that hospital treatment protocols for COVID-19 contributed to their deaths of people who just didn't even know somebody that went to the hospital? Because then that would be a signal about like the news. This is about people who say they know somebody personally. Ostensibly, many of these people know details about what happened in the hospital. 30% say very likely. 17% say somewhat likely. That's 47%, almost half. 22% say not very likely. Only 14% say not at all likely. Only 14%. Incredible. For a combined total of 36%. 47% to 36%. And 17% are not sure. But among the people who have an answer, strip out the not sures, and we're talking 57% to 43%. That's a really big lead. It's the majority of people with opinions about somebody who died in the hospital with COVID, a big majority, and pretty hard to escape the implications. This is ruining trust. Some of these people are probably afraid to go to the hospital now. 18 to 29-year-olds, 56%. It's really flat across the age spectrum, except look at this. The olds, 50 and older. These people got super vaccinated. Only 34% of them say at least somewhat likely, and only 35% of the 65 and older. Isn't that wild? People under 50, by and large, get their news from the internet. People over 50, by and large, get it from TV. And the folks who get the news from internet overwhelmingly think that hospital treatment protocols for COVID contributed to deaths. And the people above 50 are just kind of split on it. And the age and gender signal is wild too. Women under 40, overwhelmingly, maybe it's the mama bear signal, overwhelmingly 86% of them. I don't know how that happens. Republican, 58%, but also 34% of Democrats. So you're starting to see a party signal here too. But this is Democrats like weak opposition here. 34% think it's likely, 48% think it's not likely. Independents think it's likely, 52% to 33%. So please like the video and subscribe. Please share this. Maybe just take a screenshot, dump it up on Twitter with a link to the YouTube video, help spread it. I'm really hoping this gets to NIH, HHS. They got to do something. And the window's closing. And I understand that the donors, people at the tops of these companies are just going to go absolutely ape. The finance industry, like it's so interconnected. And like 22% of our GDP is the healthcare industry now. But we are not going to survive as a nation if that continues. And we know this is a fourth turning thing. This is a death of institutional trust. And the healthcare industry killed its trust over COVID. And it hasn't been restored. And it's not going to be restored until Americans see drastic action. That's why RFK is in the role he's in. That's why he backed President Donald Trump. This is what he's made his life's work about. Like, when are we going to see things? Just look, Kennedy and vaccine. And it's like, okay, back in June, he ousts the CDC Vaccine Advisory Committee. He fired the head of the CDC. He's made a couple of changes to the childhood vaccine schedule. I guess they've taken thimerosal out of some stuff. But I'm not seeing the word COVID here. And that's kind of a problem because remember, COVID drove the Democrats insane. Strong majority of them wanted people who questioned the efficacy of the vaccines thrown in prison, kind of like an original sin of the modern politics era that we need to sort out. It's one of those things on the very long and growing list of stuff that has not received accountability yet, let alone investigations. And it's still influencing modern politics. Here's our friend David Gillio tweeting about, listen, Mamdani is probably going to win in New York. Probably going to win. And conservatives are out there simping, I won't explain what that means, for his opponent, Andrew Cuomo. They're an embarrassment. It's a sign to Democrats that they can pull another COVID-style authoritarian lockdown when the next crisis arises. Because a lot of people have alleged that Cuomo was responsible for the deaths of many old people that were not properly treated during COVID in nursing homes. It's a very strong sentiment that a lot of people have. And yet it seems like when faced with the threat of a communist mayor in New York, who quite frankly, I don't care about, New York deserves that guy, they're willing to totally overlook that and just say, yeah, sure, go ahead. Everybody should vote for Andrew Cuomo. Forget about Sliwa, forget about your principles, forget about anything. Let's just vote for Cuomo. Also an extreme leftist, just to keep the worst evil out of office, just to help protect New York. In just 5 years, Republicans are already asking people to vote for one of the worst offenders. So much for never again. Yeah, exactly. He's had a lot of great tweets about this. Why do Republicans always have to be the ones to compromise and move left? Where is the pressure campaign towards Democrats in New York to vote for Cuomo instead of communists? That's right. The right is caving and not the left. Wealthy billionaire Democrats created this monster. Now they'll have to bear the consequences. Yeah. Where will it end for the Republicans telling you to vote for mass murdering tyrant Andrew Cuomo? If the situation arises, you will see these same people telling you to vote for Chuck Schumer just to stop AOC. That's a really good point. It's Democrats like Schumer, Pelosi, and Obama who led to the rise of Mamdani, AOC, and the gang. Leftist billionaires and politicians created this monster, and now they want Republicans to bail them out because it's going to hurt their personal pocketbooks. Tough luck. Stop funding leftists. Until then, you reap what you freaking sow. So I'm mad. I hope that makes you mad enough to like the video and subscribe and share it. And please, if you can, support us at rasmussenreports.com. Most of our income comes from advertisers and from subscription, and we have a reader tier. It's a couple of bucks a month. We'd really appreciate it. We have 1 to 2 stories a day, but it's always unique polling because we poll every night. It's always something highly relevant, and we have really good polls coming up. And we stream weekly too. I'm going to do a stream tonight talking about some really cool stuff about how the future of politics is about the right and the left trying to convince voters which side is more economic populist. And let me tell you, the Republican Party is not prepared for that fight right now. If you've learned something, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Follow us on X at Rasmussen_poll and myself at Honest Pollster. You can watch our videos on YouTube at Rasmussen_poll and Rasmussen_rewind, and on Rumble at Rasmussen Reports. We stream multiple times a week on Twitter, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, and Getter. Thanks for watching.